Hello and welcome to Cultivating Conversations. I'm Clare Nasir. The energy storage market is primed for huge growth. In March 2023, a European Commission published its recommendations on energy storage, stating that concrete actions were necessary to ensure greater deployment. It went on to highlight the many benefits. Analysis showing that storage is the key to decarbonising the energy system. It injects flexibility into the system, bridging the gap of supply and demand. Storage also lowers electricity prices during peak times, and these technologies facilitate the electrification of different economic sectors, notably buildings and transport, all vital parts that contribute to the road to net zero. A recent report from APAC suggested the Asia-Pacific energy storage system value is anticipated to surpass $900 billion by 2032. In the US, according to the American Clean Power Association, energy storage had its best year yet in 2022, with cumulative operating utility scale storage capacity increasing by 80%. There are many different types of energy storage system out there, and the buzz around battery storage right now is undeniable. The trend is clear. Energy storage is on a rapid growth curve and is already a key component of building a resilient grid that supports abundant clean energy. The scale of opportunity across the world is enormous. So how do businesses respond to this demand? How effectively can new solutions be developed and deployed quickly that will make important contributions to the industry? Well, meet a company that are doing just that. RheEnergise have created a smart, simple solution to energy storage, and it's getting a lot of interest. I caught up with Stephen Crosher, co-founder and CEO of RheEnergise, to learn more about their successes so far. I began by asking him about the concept and design of their high-density hydro solution.
So myself and colleagues, particularly CTO Tamas Patani, we'd been at various energy conferences a few years back, and everyone was talking about the future of energy is going to be renewables, and the problem with renewables is intermittency, as everyone knows, and the solution to intermittency is going to be batteries. No one talked about any other form of flexibility for the energy transition. It was batteries, and batteries are great. You know, they have their place to play in this. So I'm not saying that they're a bad technology, but there are other forms of technologies which are also needed to make the energy transition actually work. So when everyone on these conferences were talking about the future of energy being batteries, at that time we knew that pumped hydro was 95% of the world's energy storage by capacity, and by duration or total energy stored, it was well over 99% and still is. And so the question we asked ourselves is, why are all these commentators saying that this very mature technology is a solution for the past, but it's not a solution for the future? And so we just had a quick look at why that was the case. And it's to do with water abstraction, lack of available sites, the time it takes to consent and construct projects, environmental and social issues, which altogether means that they're difficult projects to consent and construct and build, and certainly difficult in the timescales that the climate crisis demands. So we just asked ourselves the question, is there anything you can do with innovation to bring this industry with a global footprint forward into the 21st century to provide a solution for the energy transition? And what we decided to look at was the density of the fluid. So rather than using water, if you can use a high density fluid, you can do one of two things. You can either lower the vertical elevation that's needed, which gives you many more siting opportunities, or you can reduce the volumetric size of a project. And both of those reductions are proportionate to the increase in density. So for us, our density is 2.5 times that of water. So it's just over the density of concrete. So a concrete block would float just in our fluid. And with that, with a 2.5 times the density of water, it means that the vertical elevation can be reduced by 60%. So our sites are 40% the height of a project with water. And so on a 200 metre elevation project for us, we get the same performance as a water project at 500 meters. And when you're driving down the motorway or on a train, looking out the window, you know there are many more low hills than high hills. So we're just bringing orders of magnitude more siting opportunities to a high density project. And then the projects we're looking at creating smaller projects, faster to deploy, something that can be consented in a year or thereabouts, and then built within a year to 2 years, depending on the size of the project. So within 2 to 4 years, you can have a project that's consented and operational and making a difference to the energy transition, rather than traditional pumped hydro where you're talking 15 to 20 years, which is just too slow. So if you really want to facilitate renewable energy, decarbonize the power system, have solutions for the energy crisis that we're experiencing and the climate crisis, then you need things that can be deployed at scale quickly. And that's what we're bringing. And the other thing we bring is, because there's an existing industry with a global footprint, our supply chain already exists. So we don't have to build a new gigafactory for a new type of battery chemistry. Our supply chain exists, and so we can rapidly deploy sites across the world simultaneously.
It's high school physics for a start. I'm amazed no one's thought about it before. It seems to be there screaming at you, particularly because of the infrastructure. Are you bridging a gap here, or has similar innovation been rolled out elsewhere in the world?
Innovation in gravitational energy storage, where lifting blocks and things like that, is happening. Various companies are advocating it, some better than others in our view. So there is innovation in gravity energy storage. As far as we can see, no one in the world is doing a high density fluid as a energy storage in the way we're doing with it. And we're also often asked the question, it seems so obvious, why is no one else doing it? And we don't have a sort of clear answer to that, but we think that it's fundamentally to do with the need. So for years and years that you had pumped hydro that was doing its job, and then the system needed short-term flexibility, which was being done by batteries. And then suddenly people realized actually there's still a need, with just the sheer volumes of energy that's going to need to be shifted on a daily or weekly basis is absolutely vast if you're going to a renewable energy system, and you need storage solutions that can cope with that. So if you take a step back, you can look at academic exercises which have said, you can use a higher density fluid and these are the performances, but no one's really taken it any further than that academic theory. So what we've done is taken that idea and pushed it forward into a solution that is realizable and commercial. And so that's the aim of our business, and to do that globally and make a fundamental difference to the energy and the climate emergency.
Can you tell me what the fluid is?
Sure. So the fluid is a suspended solid in water. So we use an environmentally benign mineral, and we then create that into a powder. We add polymer chemistry to it and water. And so we have a benign suspension in water, and the chemistry makes it stable, low viscosity over long periods of time. And there's nothing in the fluid that indicates that it shouldn't last for 60 years or even longer. So it's a project like ours is very much a long-term infrastructure solution. It's a solution that enables low-cost renewable energy to consumers over decade-long time periods. So consumers can have predictable, stable power prices forever. That's what we're offering.
That's incredible. Why Canada? There was a demonstration in Canada recently, and I've noticed that you are hiring in Montreal as well.
Yeah, a couple of things there. Why Canada? Why the UK? So I'm based in the UK. Our CTO is based in Montreal in Canada. And when we first had the idea, Tamas is who I turned to initially, and then Richard Cochrane, to answer the question. Is this idea possible? And we thought it was, and so we started exploring it as an idea. And then we got to the point, well, okay, this looks like it's got a real potential in the market. How are we going to set the business up? Myself in London, Tamas in Montreal. And we realized that we wanted to be a global business anyway. And so setting up a business with two centers of gravity was not really a thing that we should be scared of, given the fact that we want to have a global presence, that we'll have to do it at some point. So why not figure out how to make a business work in two locations from the outset? And so we're broadly set up where we do mechanical and electrical engineering in Montreal, in Canada. So probably 70-80% of our R&D is done there. And then in the UK is the centre for the head office functions, commercial functions, operational functions. And we also do chemistry in the UK with partnership with universities, University of Greenwich and shortly University of Exeter too. So we're, and it's actually been really good. Recruiting mechanical electrical engineers in Montreal has been excellent, and finding the right head office staff, back office people in London has been excellent. So we don't regret that decision at all.
Okay, so tell me about the difference between a Canadian energy policy and what's happening right now in the UK. Because recently I know that you were awarded, I think it was just last year, a BASE grant for a number of million, which was fantastic. Tell me, are you able to get that type of support in Canada as well?
Yeah, the support is different, as you would expect. Their sort of policy mechanisms are different in Canada to the UK. So we have a grant which is a collaboration with Queen's University in Canada. So that was set up in Canada. The tax rebates in Canada are more generous than the UK. So for R&D, tax rebates are very good over there. What we're tending to find is that in the UK, there is greater support for earlier stage technology development, while in Canada, there tends to be more support for later stage when you're just pre-commercial. So that's quite a good dovetailing of governmental support. And then in Canada, obviously, you're right next to the US, and there's all sorts of opportunities in the US, especially with the Inflation Reduction Act. So having an operation in the same time zones as New York, the East Coast, is a huge advantage, and the ability to cross the border and reach out to the States, which ultimately is going to be one of the bigger markets in terms of energy storage and renewable energy. So being on that continent is a big advantage. So we're very pleased with that decision.
Stephen is an inspirational character with an impressive resume. He has spent 10 years in the renewable energy industry, 5 years developing innovation and policy, and 15 years in architecture and design. His expertise in bridging the gaps between policy, innovation, technology, and finance creates a solid foundation to build an energy business. And with RheEnergise, he has built a team with a broad range of experience in finance, energy, and technical development, essential talent in driving success. Being located in Europe and North America also supports this business model. For me, though, it's also about the functionality of their hydro system, a neat system that fits with existing infrastructure. I asked Stephen how and where it would be rolled out.
Yeah, sure. So we just need a hill, really, and that's it. A hill and a power connection and a planning department or local community that will support us. So that's really all we need for a project. So the project could be beside a wind farm or an existing hydro facility, or it could be on, rather than right next to the river, it could be on the opposite side of the hill, but still connected to the same points. One of the things that we see as our advantage is the flexibility of what we're trying to do. We're not constrained. So something like a hydropower solution, pumped hydro, they're looking for hanging valleys. So they're looking for a high valley where they can dam across the face of it. So it's not only height they need, but also very specific geography. and that makes the opportunities few and far between. But for us, it's changing elevation, buried underground. It can be on a slope or it can be flat at the top. It doesn't really matter. So just the opportunities are huge for us in terms of number of sites.
And not disturbing the environment. Once it's all in place, it just sits there and becomes part of that local area.
Yeah, absolutely. And because our projects we intend to last for 60 years or longer, that it's a great opportunity for landscaping and creating these still relatively small landscape corridors. So you would, screens of trees or shrubs at the top, and down where the pipes run down the hill, again you'd landscape around that, and again at the bottom. So you're creating the potential for environmental areas which are not going to be disturbed for decades, because there's a operational project sitting below and behind, which means that nature can take its course over that period of time, and we think that's great. We can always even put things like in the structures we build, bird boxes, bat boxes, all of these things you could just incorporate into it. It's which would be great. One thing that we're really keen to do as a business is and we're exploring these ideas, and we've actually got another grant to explore waste materials from other industries to make the fluid.
Wow, that's interesting.
So this is something that we've already embarked upon. We're around 6 weeks into that project, and we're getting waste materials from 3 or 4 industries now. Well, we haven't actually got them yet, but they're in the post, to start exploring whether we can create sort of circular economies in waste materials from other industries to create the fluid. So that's an exciting 2-year project that we're again funded by BEIS, or DESNE as they're now called. So that's exciting, and we've got further ideas on how to reuse other materials in part of our construction process, which we haven't got a grant for yet, but we were talking about it just before this call about who our partners might be on doing that. So we've not only got this solution, but we're helping to solve other industries' waste problems. That's an exciting prospect.
Collaboration and partnership going forward is just so key, isn't it, for a greater and a bigger solution? As you've just said, it's like there are other opportunities out there where you can support, particularly when it comes to waste and upcycling, and this circular economy of utilizing someone else's waste is another man's opportunity.
I mean, that's sort of the whole story around man's impact on the world and climate change, and solutions that solve one problem are fantastic. Solutions that solve 2 or 3 are even better. And one of the great things about our team is how imaginative they are, where we try to have a culture whereby it doesn't matter how silly you think your idea might be, but share it. That's where innovation and change comes from, and that's ultimately what's going to make it better for all of us. Where we have a problem, we also have an opportunity, and if we can help solve someone else's problem by that opportunity, that's great.
So let's just talk about now where you're at. Let's just backtrack a little bit. So obviously you had your concept and you've tested it out and you did your demonstration day. You also went down the route of crowdfunding. Am I correct there?
Yeah, very much so. So we took the decision quite early that crowdfunding was a good route for us. We had an idea and a certain amount of testing and some grant support, some earlier grant support from the UK government to develop the idea and the technology a bit further, prove it. And what the great thing about crowdfunding is as a business, you're very much in control of the timing. It is quite a lot of effort, but once you've started in that process, from the day you start it to roughly 5 months later, you'll have the money in the bank, or you would have failed to get it. So the time frame is very predictable, and that's a huge advantage to a business like ours. You can make a decision about we'll have visibility within 3 months about how much money we'll receive, how much support there is from the crowd, the many members of the public that we're very grateful to. And then from that, the visibility of how much you're going to get to actually having it in your bank account is all quite short and predictable. And that means that you can get on with running the business and get on with the next stage of that development, rather than having to hunker down and if the fundraising is slower, or you have this stop-start happen, or you have the risk of you stopping and then trying to accelerate again, maybe lose key people, etc., etc. So the predictability is incredibly valuable, and it's a good process. So we're very grateful. We're now moving on to do a Series A fundraising, which is larger, and the principle behind that is there comes a limit to what the crowd can support, and which is different to what the business needs. So the business going forward really needs more money than the crowdfunding is able to provide. But also you need to develop the relationships with your supply chain, whether that's sort of finance for projects, or your equipment suppliers, or project developers. You need the relationships and the support of businesses that are bigger than we are. So at some point, which is for us is now, you do have to shift from a very supportive network of like-minded people, I guess. We quite regularly come across people where you're at some event and someone says, I've got an investment in you, and I made it in early 2022 or something like that. And it happens all the time, which is great. But yeah, unfortunately, you need deeper pockets, and you've got to go to institutional investors or venture capital, and to ensure that the business grows. And fundamentally, we're a business that is trying to solve the climate crisis. We're trying to enable vast amounts of renewable energy to be put on the grid in one form or another. So we're an enabler for the energy transition. And that's fundamentally what motivates us to make that difference to climate change, to mitigate climate change. Without more substantial funding, we can't keep accelerating the growth and achieving that. We could go much slower, but then we don't move the needle on climate change, which is what we're trying to do.
I've heard it say that finding a Series A investor is like an old-fashioned courtship. Are you finding that? Are you down the road with that? Is it happening right now, or are you still looking?
Oh, it's happening right now. So we've had. I was asked by our PR person, Philippa, yesterday, how many conversations have you had one-on-one this month? I've had 22. So we have an awful lot of interest. We're 2 months into the process, so I guess I've probably had 80 conversations over that 2-month period from corporates and VCs. So there's a significant amount of interest in what we're doing. Like you say, it is a courtship. We have a good data room, and we've been giving access to various people to that data room to take it through to the next stages of the conversation for investment. So we're reasonably bullish about the process. The interest has been phenomenal. Our advisors have been saying, the interest is good, among the best they've seen. So, given where we are, and collapse of Silicon Valley Bank, and other things which are going on in the market, there's still a lot of interest. We don't fit the criteria for all investment funds, whatever reason that we're not quite right for them. So, we've had some people say, super interested, not for us at the moment.
You've got a very impressive team behind you with a broad swathe of skills at a very high level. So you're developing the business on so many levels, and you have, obviously, because of your experience and where you've come from, you have a sort of in-depth understanding of the industry.
So we're super fortunate with the quality of the team that we've managed to recruit. We have 6 PhDs in a team of 20, so two MBAs, no, three now, and so we're our team is very talented. And we do have, and the founders have a broad range of experience, as you say, working in energy, the financial side of the energy industry, but also in the technical development. So, yeah, we think our team is very strong. We're continuing to improve it and grow the team. And in terms of the engineering that we're doing, when we talk to people, the initial thinking is it's all about the fluid. It's the fluid, it's the fluid, it's the fluid. But the reality is that once you've introduced a new fluid into a hydropower-like system, it affects everything else. So you then have to go, okay, well, the fluid affects the turbo machinery, and therefore the pumps and turbines need to be designed to accommodate the fluid. So for our pumps and turbines, volumetrically, they're only 40% of the size of a turbine for water, but the forces remain the same. So your things get smaller, which is great from a cost perspective, but you've got to redesign them because the forces remain the same. So they're different to a water turbine, and then that sort of progresses through the whole system. So you've got your flow control systems, how you operate the project, etc., etc. So the fluid is the starting point, but it affects everything else. And so we tend to talk about 6 critical subsystems where you got to develop innovation, research, IP around the critical subsystems to make a whole system, which is then what we plan to license to property developers globally.
When you say property developers, is there any particular industry that you're targeting which would really be able to sort of use this?
Well, yes and no, I suppose is the answer to that. So we see there's some beachhead markets. So the mining industry is one which are really looking how they can decarbonise their operations, their high energy users, but also other commercial industrial users. So those are good beachhead markets, as are markets where they've got grid problems. So South Africa, their grid supplier is regularly turning off the power to all sorts of different businesses. And so the market is really about system security, how you can operate your business, rather than necessarily the cost of energy. And so we're seeing beachhead markets in all sorts of farming applications across South Africa and things like that. But ultimately, we think the biggest market is co-location with renewable energy projects, or being adjacent to renewable energy projects, or on the grid at areas of congestion, so where the power can't get through at a certain time of day, we have a solution to ease that congestion at those points, or close to demand, so on the edge of cities and towns, whereby again you need to buffer the energy that's going into the city at some point. So that's what we, ultimately it's a grid connected solution to provide, low cost power all the time to consumers.
I think business is now catching up with the climate scientists and all the reports which have been rolled out over decades now. And that really comes down to timing with your solution as well. Do you think it would have sat as easily in this space even 5 years ago?
If we had started 10 years earlier, we probably wouldn't be any further forward than we are now, because the market was just wrong. The solutions were a solution like ours, which is offering a medium duration technology, was just not needed. The need is here in some markets now, and in many, many more markets in 3 to 5 years, and then across the world 10 years' time. So the need is very much upon us. It's a tidal wave of opportunity for us as a business, and it's just beginning to take off. So we're very pleased with where we are in terms of technology development, growing market. It's a super exciting time.
And I must say, congratulations, you have been shortlisted for, let me just get this right, shortlisted for the Whole Energy System Innovation Award at this year's Green Energy Awards. And how did that make you feel? I mean, that's testament, if anything.
In industry, the recognition by your peers is a great thing. So people who are expert in the industry see what the industry is needed, both in terms of innovation, but also in terms of the broader energy market. And so having recognition by your peers as being an industry leader is excellent.
Is it something where you know, in 5 years, 10 years, you want to be driving down the M1 and you can see a little hillock there and you know it's powering all the EVs in this service station next to the motorway?
Yeah, absolutely. That's our ambition. Is that you're driving down the motorway, you probably don't see the project because people don't necessarily want to see things on the tops of hills, or probably not even on the top of a hill. We're more likely to build the upper storage tanks on the shoulder of a hill, so it's not at the very highest point, but at a point which is less sensitive. Build the project, then landscape it, hide it. We'll know that the project's there, it's powering the EV charging or the local town or the local business, but the general public won't, and that's great. They'll and then they're here on the news that this year, 2030, 90% of their electricity has come from renewables. As a business, internally, we talk about being a member of the Gigaton Club, which is really about having a solution which is saving gigatons of CO2 per year, or per decade, or whatever. Obviously, there's a growth curve to that, but a gigaton of CO2 saved is those are the sorts of businesses that will move the needle on climate change, and that's where we want to be. And we firmly believe we have a solution that provides the opportunity to deliver that. So that's our ambition.
That's just incredible. And we will watch with great interest as you scale your business and make a real positive impact across the world. Stephen Crosher, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much, Claire. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
You've been listening to Cultivating Conversations with me, Clare Nasir. Cultivating Conversations is a Chaseman Global production.